Hey everybody, it's John and Jackie of OpenLove101.com, and we're here today in Houston at Couples Escape. And with us today are Charlie and Arienne of Sex Because.
Yay.
How are you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Yes.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. And we want to let everyone out in the audience know we've left some notepads and pens out there. And if you have any questions you want to ask us, we'll probably save 10 or 15 minutes at the end, and we'll take some of those questions. If anyone comes in, if you wouldn't mind letting them know, they can write their questions down as well, and we'll try and answer them for us later.
Definitely
if you don't want to put your name on it and just want it anonymous, that's fine as well. So, so you guys, Sex Because, tell us a little bit about that.
Where do we start?
Where do we start? Okay. Sex Because was something, we had specialized in PTSD for a long time.
And what is PTSD?
Post-traumatic stress disorder. And we had worked for 27 years in the field, working with sexual trauma, working with substance abuse, a lot of BPD, a lot of dual diagnosis
What's
disorders.
BPD?
A borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
So wait. I have to stop you a minute because, at least for me, when I think of PTSD, I immediately think of soldiers.
Okay.
So it's interesting that you're saying PTSD can be.
Oh my goodness.
It's not specific to just veterans or soldiers.
Okay,
it's
so you
anyone
can have
who's endured
sexual.
any type of psychological trauma.
Really?
Yeah, the incredible thing about it is that we often think about major traumas, we don't think about minor traumas. Life holds quite a few minor traumas. Over the course of your lifetime, you're going to see small events that can neurologically change you depending on what age they happen, what other things are going on, even some of the things that happen to you, attachment styles that happen in childhood. And these things can neurologically change you over time. They can affect your adrenaline systems, they can affect your glandular, and what it happens, what it does is it affects the way that you form relationships going forward. Because
Really?
your
And the
trust
type
systems
of
are
people that you choose to have relationships with, because if you're not comfortable with intimacy or attachment, you're going to choose people that are the same way.
Wow.
So a lot of times we like to talk about things like from an intimate standpoint about sex. We talk about the present relationship we're in and how fulfilling or not satisfying it can be, but we don't like to talk about what the initial attachment to this person was all about and why we were attached to this person in the first place.
Very interesting. And that's why most of my relationships early on, prior to Jackie, were less than a year.
Bingo.
Yes.
I was notorious for it.
Yes. And I only chose, prior to Charlie, people that I felt like I could beat up.
She did.
You can beat up.
Literally.
Yes.
That's what she chose.
Like men.
I needed to
literally-
know I could take you if I needed to.
Probably the 18th comment she ever told me. And I got a little intimidated because she's pretty fierce, pretty feisty. And she said, I only choose guys I can beat up. I said, well, thank you. I don't know how quite to take
Yeah,
that.
I didn't know how to take that either.
How do I look to you? But that's what she was threatened early on.
Yeah.
How did you guys meet?
That's a long
You
story as
start that.
well. Okay. Well, he was speaking in my graduate class. They had paid him to come and speak, and he was speaking about reentry. He was speaking about trauma, and basically telling us all that we are.
You suck.
Yeah, you suck. That's what he was telling us.
Yeah.
You guys are you haven't been out there in the field yet. You don't know what it's like to be a therapist. You know, it's just,
Hold on, I want to back up.
Okay,
Back
go
up.
ahead,
It's
go
making me
ahead.
look crazy here. Since I've been in the field for a long time, a little bit longer than her at the time. She's been out a great deal since then. I was really, I don't know. I look at a new therapist as though they were like new Christians. You learn the Bible, and then what you do is you go around and you start telling people, hey, how they're going to go to hell, how they're going to do this, how they're going to do that, and you don't learn a lot about the grace part that they're supposed to be teaching in the book. A lot of therapists, what they do is they go around diagnosing people, they tell people what's wrong with you, this is how we can fix you, and instead of the people being individuals, the client being an individual,
they become a diagnosis.
They become a diagnosis. So I would say often that when you graduate, you're going to do more harm than good for a couple of years, but you need to know. You don't know very much. So.
But I can say that when he was saying all of that, I didn't hear anything, because all I'm thinking is how hot he is. Like how which was strange to me, because at that point, and I say this, when I talk often, is that to that point I had never been attracted to a man, and I thought something was wrong. Like what is going on with me? Women would talk about these stars that were attractive, and I couldn't relate. And then I saw him, and I was immediately attracted to him, and it freaked me out.
It's kind of weird for me too as well, because she's sitting on the front row there with these little short shorts on and toe socks and a pair of flip-flops. Yeah.
That was my gift.
And she was fantastic. And I was like, wow, I talked to a lot of classes, but I don't see a lot of this in these classes. So, but yeah, it was interesting for us. You almost felt like energy immediately.
But I left. I ran out of that class because women ran to him, and I was like, oh, I can't compete with that. This is a lot. And I was freaked out as well. And then I needed to intern somewhere. And I went and I walked into the clinic and I didn't know he was there and I saw him.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so what we immediately did is we grabbed each other and we kissed. No, we didn't do that.
No.
What we did is I saw her walk in and I immediately turned and walked the other way because I was like, oh my God, it's my mentor had told me, backing up on my experience with this, is that he had said to me, who was Mitchell Young, Dr. Mitchell Young, he's leader in PTSD, and he's an amazing guy. He mentored me for years, and he said that this girl that's coming on board, she may be more talented than you are. He used to challenge me all the time. And since I had a history of, I get the incarceration, went to college after that, and all this kind of stuff, I really worked hard to kind of try to be the best in my field. And he said, she is better. And so I was feisty, I was ready. And then all of a sudden, the person that's walking in for the 10 o'clock appointment is this girl that was in toe socks with Daisy Dukes, not Daisy Dukes, with short shorts on. It was her. So, yeah, it was kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. So she walked out the other way, closed the door.
I walked back outside.
Yeah.
I said, no, this is trouble. I don't know about this.
And I immediately walked down the other way of the hall. And
so you guys were essentially kind of like shy about meeting each other. You had these fears.
Like opposing magnets almost.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
Whoa.
I didn't want to have anything to do with a relationship that worked. And I don't know what you didn't want to have anything to do, but with.
I didn't want to have anything to do with something I felt as though I couldn't control.
So we were control freaks.
And then we found out that when we were engaged, we found out that we knew each other when I was 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that?
How would that have happened?
No. Yeah.
She had gone from, I can tell you a little bit about Arienne's history, is that she's 6, 7, 8 years old. The guy had molested her. Her mom had left her with a boyfriend when she went to the military. The guy molested her for a couple of years, and she was turned over to foster care after that. And then from foster care, she went to stay with an aunt's house, her grandmother, who ended up living in my neighborhood at the time. And my girlfriend was her aunt's best friend, and I went over to their house, and this little girl in foster care that my girlfriend was babysitting.
Strawberry shortcake bite.
Strawberry shortcake bite, which I remembered. We played Monopoly for a weekend, and it was her. And I was a little teenager that was, committing felonies left and right and doing my thing, and all I could, I was a different guy at that point.
Sure, I was sneaking in money under the table.
Yeah,
That's what I did with Monopoly. I was trained to do that. I don't know what.
So we met, and there was a picture taken with us together, and we didn't know until, this is one thing we love about social media, is we discovered that picture was out there, and it was pretty incredible. So
that's the story.
That's
You
the
realize
story.
that Jackie and I, after we'd been married a couple of years, she pulled out a kindergarten picture, and she said, this is me in kindergarten. And I'm like, oh my God, that's me in kindergarten.
Oh my God.
So 3 people down, he's sitting.
You're kidding.
No, isn't that crazy?
Yeah. It's destined to be. Destined to be.
Yes.
It's weird. So when you start thinking about the powers of the universe, we can go on and on about that, but you start thinking that these things have a way of coming to pass.
So it's interesting when you're talking about how you met, and there sounds like there's quite a bit of personal history that maybe was pivotal in you choosing your interest job-wise.
Yes. I always say the prison led me to her. And if I'd never gone, I would have never gone to college afterwards. I'd never chosen the field that I was in, and I would have never been speaking in front of her classroom had I not gone that route. And I would have never met Arienne had I not made some of the poor decisions I made early in life. So I'm thankful for those poor decisions, not just because of how they shaped me as a person, but if I'm not thinking about reentry programs and not building programs for prisons to help guys deal with sexual trauma and that type of thing, then we would have never been able to connect the way that we did. So,
tell me a little bit about your thought pattern in that, as far as your past and being able to embrace that and use it as stepping stones instead of a way to shame yourself or guilt yourself. I mean, how do you take those things and talk positively about them? Because I think sometimes we will take things that we've done or that we're thinking about doing, and we'll want to villainize it somehow. But you take those things and you turn them into something positive.
Well, it's something that we can't change, right? Number one. And number two, I mean, that's, at least for us, I mean, for me, that's the only option. I mean, it's made me who I am, and a lot of people say that, and that's usually the reason why people go into the counseling field, because this happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So first of all, I want to heal me, and then you want to learn to heal other people.
Yeah, she could be light with it. I mean, Arienne went through a great deal of stuff. When you think about the route in which she took, her mom didn't come back until she was 16 years old, really. She wasn't living with her mom really until 16. So when we got married, funny thing about it is her grandmother, I remember at the reception that we did, her grandmother said to the girl who didn't really have a bed till she was 17. She just did a toast. And I remember thinking that's the saddest toast I've ever heard in my entire life.
Everybody got really
But
quiet.
everybody got
It was
quiet
really
at the
awkward.
table. And Arienne's not very, she didn't talk a ton about that at the time. She could make light of it because she did her own work. I mean, when I met her, she didn't hold me responsible for the damage that happened to her prior. She had already done the work to heal. So I wasn't responsible for what this man or any other man did to her. So we were able to have a whole relationship, and I didn't have to work as hard. And that was something brand new to me. I was accustomed to working so hard to make relationships work because I felt inadequate. And one of the first things you ever told me was, what did you say? You don't have to work.
You don't have to work so hard to please other people. Because I watched him and just see like he was working all the time to ensure everyone that they were okay and they were happy and they were getting their needs met. But he was never getting his needs met.
It was important for me to hear that because my early life made me feel guilty for the people that I hurt early on.
Right.
So I spent a lot of time running a race that I was never going to win. And she just sat me down and says, you've made all the reparations you need to make. It's okay to rest. It's okay to relax. It's okay to let someone take care of you.
And when we met, he didn't require me to work as hard because I was so busy always taking care of other people, which is a choice because it made me not have to talk about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And when we met, he was very interested in what I had to say and what I had been through. So I was like, wow, somebody wants to know something about me. That's weird.
Yeah. I can tell by the way she answered questions that she wasn't used to talking about herself. They were very one-sentence answers.
Sure.
And I'd say, I want to know a little bit more, and she didn't want to. She shared, she was very honest, but it almost seemed like a story. So we helped each other work. A lot of the times when people have been hurt, they tell a story. You guys know what I'm talking about. Then people come to you and they tell you a story. And it's a narrative. It's 3 minutes of this is what I went through in life. And don't ask me any questions because I want you to feel as though I answered all of them.
Right.
And that's what you get good at doing when you're a therapist, is you get good at telling those types of narratives so people don't spend much time asking you about yourself. And we were able to kind of fight through that with each other and really get to the core of who we are as people.
And so you say that you just accept what happened, you know, in both of your lives, but many people don't do that. Many people hold on to the shame and their guilt.
And they do because it's scary to lose your identity, and that becomes part of their identity.
Yeah, it does.
So when you don't have an identity, you feel lost and scared because obviously it's scary. Like, who am I now without it?
Yeah. Well, a painful identity, a damaged identity, an abused identity is an identity. Understand? It's an identity. So what you're asking people to do is heal from something that they've been for so long and then be something new, but you're not giving them something new to be. And people don't do well with that. They don't do well with that. It's guys that do many tours in combat, they come back and they don't know who to fight now.
Right.
You know, this is who I've been, this is my definition, there's no enemy now, so what am I? You know, so we had to learn that ourselves, just how to be something new.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about your abuse that you endured when you were younger. So how have you grown through that? Because there would be people that would say, well, of course now you're doing this because of what happened to you when you were little. So how do you answer that?
Well, I can't apply what happened to me to everybody.
Right.
Because people can they can have the same things happen to them, but experience them differently. I mean, there's too many variables to say that we're all the same.
I think what you're saying is too about kink. Like when you think about, were you talking about kink in general? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just this kind of open acceptance of sexuality. You know, they would say,
Yeah.
well, it's because of what happened to you when you were younger.
Yeah.
That's,
Arousal's so complicated.
That's so complicated
It
because
is.
your neighbor, who's to say the same thing didn't happen to your neighbor?
Right.
You know, but they may not be interested in BDSM, kink, or consensual non-monogamy.
Yeah, we're careful not to say that these things don't lead to this. We see the kink community, even see some kink professionals that are saying abuse doesn't lead to this, doesn't lead to that. There's so many components that are innate when it comes to arousal that we don't know. They all come together. It could be you saw something when you were 8 years old and was attractive, and then maybe in the same time you had an abusive father that was this, and you felt out of control. There's all kinds of things. The problem that we run into is we try to figure it out, and there's no science for it. All of these things are contributing factors. To say that we haven't sat in bed and also talked about things that happened to her when she was a child. Oh my God, we've had the craziest conversations about things, but that aren't so crazy for us.
I would say that the power exchange relationship that we have, for me personally, however, has been healing. And it's the relationship itself that has been healing.
So, because it's interesting, what you're saying is that having, whatever happened to you or anybody, being involved in any other kind of sexual activity when you get older is not a negative reflection of what that happened. It can be very positive. I mean, I think society tends to want to try to encapsulate this in something very negative instead of looking at it as something positive and a way for you to regain whatever it was that you lost. I really want you to tell me about the BDSM part of your relationship, because I think there's a lot of confusion and misconception about what that means. They just think it's like something abusive or some kind of power
She's so
thing.
weak.
Yeah, I'm just going to control her, but that's not what it is.
No.
It's not at all. It requires a great deal of strength to serve and to give up that perceived loss of control, because you can end it at any time.
So what is serve? What does that mean in BDSM when you're saying that?
Okay, well, BDSM is more power exchange.
Okay.
So with that exchange of power, there's a great deal of trust and vulnerability.
Well, for you, I think she's asking what's for you. And I love the fact that we
Look,
do talk
he's like, no, they're talking about
and
you,
I love
Larry.
that. 'Cause this is and this is another thing. This is another thing that I think is extremely positive when it comes to our relationship, is that we talked about this even before we did an interview. She's been a therapist for so long. Arienne is one of the best therapists I've ever seen. Now, one of the drawbacks of being a therapist is that we are listeners. So when we got into media and we're teaching about kink, it was very difficult, and I think we shared even with these guys here sitting, it was very difficult to make that transfer. Typically what we do is we'll breadcrumb an answer, or we'll tell an answer, and we'll say, hey, look, this is an overview of how we do it. Now, how are you doing it? And when it comes to our personal relationships with each other, our personal struggles, sometimes we don't give it a name as much. I can tell you as a submissive, the one thing that I wanted to work with her as a dominant on is that I wanted to let her know that she could trust someone to not commit things like infidelity. Because she had been through those things, or not to be abusive to her, or not just because they had been abused, not to degrade her in a way that, and I know it sounds like when you talk BDSM, there's some terms that are thrown out there, but like for instance, she had a former relationship where the guy would often call her, if she talked to a guy, a slut. And I would turn around and say, well, that's going to be a positive word in our household. So I will call you that, and that will be a reward for this type of behavior. And it got tricky because initially, being the strong woman that worked from foster care to grad school on her own, she didn't want to give up that kind of power.
No, and that was a struggle initially because I really wanted it. The type of pornography that I was interested in watching, the fantasies I had in my mind were very much based in power exchange. But I had difficulties giving up control and relinquishing that and being vulnerable and trusting somebody to not really damage me. And with us in the beginning, I was not a good submissive.
Ooh, back up.
So what kept you from saying, I just can't do this? I mean,
she said that many times.
What is that thing that keeps you going? Because that will happen with people that they want to branch out from the relationship.
Not just in BDSM,
but in anything, and they come up against a hurdle and they're like, well, this just isn't for us. What keeps you going through that?
We kept doing it because we agreed. One thing that's great about her, many things, is that when she makes a decision, she's usually going to stay with it. Now, it doesn't mean that we didn't get into BDSM and she didn't grab, and we're probably going to talk about this a little bit. One time I was spanking her and she grabbed the paddle and threw it out of the room. I mean, she says, I'm not doing this. And, the decision we made at that point in time is I wasn't going to overpower her. I was like, you requested this type of scene.
Right.
So what we're going to do is, if you're not requesting it now, I'm not going to give it to you. And she got pouty and she said, no, I want you to do this. But I often call it backleading, because when we dance, we call something backleading, where she's trying to be the leader, but she's choosing to be the person that follows. Which one do you want to be? I can't be both. So with her submitting, she was able to write a contract, but abiding by that contract was very difficult. This is a woman that when I met her, she had 2 dresses. She got one dress when she got her bachelor's degree, and she got another dress when she got her master's. And she said, I'm going to buy another dress when I get my PhD. That's the only dresses I'm going to have, because I want to be taken seriously as a professional, not as an object, as a person.
Not as a woman.
Not as a woman, not as this, not as that. And I said, oh no, we're about to get a lot of dresses, and we're going to shorten them because you feel sexy and you enjoy it. And this was a transition for her. We actually called it bimboification at that point in time.
Bimboification.
Bimboification.
We went through the process of bimboification.
I said, look, do you feel sexy when you wear this short dress? She goes, yes, but people won't take me seriously as a therapist. And I said, we're not worried about people right now. Mm-hmm. Your marriage will have people take you seriously as a therapist. And it turned out,
and over time, I became more confident in who I am, instead of being what I perceived other people needing me to be to get my needs met.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, she worked with the police department, the fire department. After shooting, she would work with people that dealt with cops that were trying to go back to work and things like that. And I'm going to tell you, when the department came in, they may have thought, when an officer came in, he may have thought, hey, she looks hot, for about 5 minutes. He'd come out of the room and he's like, oh my God, she's rough. And that's where the professionalism kind of overpowered her perception of what she was going to be what she would be seen as if she dressed a certain way. So we worked on that, and we had a good time doing it. And in turn, she helped me become someone that could trust someone saying, I would like this from you, and I want this from you, and I'm not going to change faces on you tomorrow and say you're inadequate or you're not enough. And that's something that helped me a great deal too.
He had a hard time demanding his needs.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a learning process for him as well.
Wow.
I would say.
Yeah, it really was.
You both really grew individually and in your relationship through the process. So.
Yeah. She let me nurture her, and that was in turn, she nurtured me in return, and that was very strange. It was really weird.
I can guarantee you that there's a lot of the population that is going to hear that for the first time, and their brains just going to explode. I mean, because you just think about this. Well, you're saying power exchange, but when I was first introduced to BDSM, I couldn't grasp what was going on. I was just like, oh, they're being mean, or she's got issues about something, but that is just absolutely not what's going on.
Not at
I mean,
all.
it's a real growth process for both of you.
It really is. It really is. It's like when we, bring up something here, but when we had lunch with you guys that one day, we had a great lunch, 3-hour lunch with y'all one time.
Yes.
And I remember leaving, and one thing we said to each other, we said we wouldn't be able to have these friendships without risking being open as who we are as people. Because these types of friendships are only available to those people that are willing to be who they are. These aren't available for people that are going to be fake and not somewhat transparent. And that was a struggle for us, working with the church, working in North Louisiana for a long period of time. Being who we are, we just had to make a decision that was what we're going to be.
Okay, so then that opens up another series of questions from me about being open about who you are and what you do, and how gratifying that is for you, and how it opens you up to other people. Mm-hmm. We're in this, so many people call it the lifestyle.
Yeah.
That from a societal standpoint, we're really kind of pushed down into the sub-basement of what's going on, because we're told that that's not really something we're supposed to be doing. And unfortunately, that means that there's a lot of couples out there, whether it's their work or their family, they don't feel like they can be honest, which is so interesting, because the whole premise of these kinds of relationships, at least to me, the core of it, is honesty.
Yes, it is.
I mean, it's about getting honest about who you are.
Yeah.
So what do you see the future of this? You know, I know we had talked before we sat down about whether this is, you know, a lifestyle, something people are choosing to do, or if it's something more innate. You know, there's a lot of scientific study that seems to be coming out saying, oh, you're kind of designed like this. We're designed to be more non-monogamous or
promiscuous or whatever.
Whatever word they give it to.
Word you want to give it. So, kind of, what are your thoughts on the honesty issue, that you know, being open as opposed to feeling that you have to be secret, and just where this is going?
I think that it's always been here. And I think that when you talk about puritanical society, you talk about Western culture, we made a lot of changes when we started adopting certain religious beliefs over time. If you go back to William Tisdale, when he reinterpreted the New Testament, and you go back to the Old Testament where you talk about Solomon, his hundreds of concubines and his many wives, and you're really trying to figure out how Solomon did that. The wisest man ever did that without doing a threesome. I really don't know how that happened. You know what I mean? It sounds like there's a lot of sevensomes going on.
That part was edited out.
Yeah, that was edited out. Like somewhere along the line, there's a big gap. And when I was working with pastors, it seemed to be the biggest challenge, even for some of the megachurch pastors I was working with, is that we want sexuality to be something that's not unique, but we want everything else about us to be unique.
Right.
And we want sexuality to be the same for everyone. But we don't. We want accents to be different. We want hairstyles to be different. We want weight to be different. We want taste in foods to be different. But we don't want that to change, because it's almost like we need to control that piece. And, you know, going back to the church, and I'm, you know, you guys know that the church figured out a long time ago it can make you feel guilty about something you couldn't change about yourself.
Yeah.
So, and with guilt there comes money, and there's all kinds of things that go with this. And I just think that it's not so much about being open as much as people just being who they are, and trying to live under a definition that was set thousands of years ago to make you feel shame. So it's a flawed definition more than it is a change in, I think, a change in thought or a change in sexual practices. It's always been there.
And if you look at the youngest generation, the millennials, they don't like labels.
They don't like labels at all.
And isn't that interesting? Because it almost seems like we're in a realm where we have so many labels.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
It's like an oxymoron.
Yeah.
It's like we have to go far left. You know, anytime there's any type of suppression, it's natural to go far left.
Yeah, that
to
pendulum
push it.
just
Yes, eventually it swings its way back somewhere.
Yeah, I often said that in Colorado when I was there, people were so liberal they were conservative. Like you couldn't think freely. Any opinion whatsoever that may have been a little perceived as what would be termed as conservative, you were immediately burned at the stake. You can have various amounts of opinions about things and be human. It's okay to be that. Maybe this isn't your type of sex. Maybe it's their type of sex. But believe me, you have the right to do whatever you do. If there's no coercion or abuse, you have that right.
And I feel like right now, climate-wise, we have two different generations battling.
I think so too.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Not to talk politics.
Yeah, we do have two. But the great thing about this generation that's battling now is that it was allowed to do that based on the generation prior. So we actually did some work. We look at our children now, and we see how open they are, and we consider themselves queer or LGBT or this and that. And we're like thinking as parents, we're like, well, we created something where this opinion is at least allowed, or this sexual orientation is at least allowed.
Absolutely.
So you can dog us as much as you want, millennials. The only reason you're here is because we decided to do the things we did, and we gave you an option. So, because our parents didn't do that for us. So, you know, that's the way that I look at it. But hopefully they take it and run with it.
Well, and you do work with the LGBT community as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we don't really look at it. I know I don't. I look at it as a community like anyone else. You know, your sexual preferences, or sexual orientation is second to you needing help or something, whatever. We've noticed that a couple is a couple, whether you're determined as a poly couple, whether you're determined as a gay couple, straight. A couple's a couple. Love is love.
Right. We're familiar with the unique challenges that different groups face,
Okay.
but there's still people.
Yeah, there's still people. Week of Pride is one of the reasons we're doing the Week of Pride thing, and people are looking and going, my God, Jamaica is this and that, and we've never known Jamaica to do a week of Pride. One of the reasons we want to do it is because it's just like in the 60s and 70s when I was in the 70s, I was an African-American male in Louisiana. And there are just things that we weren't, even though segregation had been finished, there are just things we weren't supposed to do. There are sides of town in Monroe, Louisiana that you did not live on. Just because it had been desegregated doesn't mean that people moved. You still wanted to stay on the black side of town. My parents decided to move to the white side of town. And I thought that was the craziest damn decision they could ever do. When people are shooting our windows out and saying, we don't want you here, nigger, we don't want you here. Fast forward 20 years later, that neighborhood that they're in is 50% African American. So the school that I went to, where I was one of the first black students to ever go, is now 50% African American. So you need pioneers that sit back and say, we're going to do this even though you may not believe it. So please follow so we can change the climate. Because you got to step in.
Absolutely.
And
really
it's
do.
interesting, being bisexual myself, I remember one of our sons said something about a woman being attractive. And I said, yeah, she's really attractive. And he said, what, do you bi? And I said, well, actually, yes.
What?
Yeah.
I am. Like, what, do you want to talk about that? Do you want to talk about my sexual orientation? And he said, no.
No.
Okay. And he walked away.
No.
Okay, so that is so great that you said that, because I think that, that's another big question that John and I get a lot of times, and I think it's something that a lot of couples will struggle with kids. Do I tell my kids, So for you, just coming right out and it's just there.
Yeah.
And then he had the decision on what he wanted to do with that.
Yes.
And you trusted, and I don't know how conscious you were when you said it, but you trusted that he was going to see who you were, and still, I guess he could have stormed out and said, I hate you now because you're that, but
I'd be like, I still
really,
pay your bills.
right. But I think it's really, that's one of those moments where your child sees you as a human being. And I think that's really important.
Yes, because a lot happens in the early 20s when kids are really disappointed that their parents are real people.
Yes. We tell our kids that all the time. We do tell them things that are age appropriate at time, but we don't need to tell you what we do in our bedroom.
No,
okay? We don't need to know positions.
No, we don't
need to know
that.
who's there, who's not there, what we're doing. But we do tell you things that we feel as though are completely okay if you do choose. We had a daughter that went to prom with a girl one year, and the next year went with a boy. We do. And people say, how can you do that? I was like, how can you even ask me that question? How are you even in my house?
Yeah.
So, get out of my house. And in turn, what we've done is we've produced some pretty successful kids that are in college, that are doing their things and finding their way.
And really accepting of people in general.
We've noticed it takes a lot of stress off their plate when they don't have to worry about what someone else is doing. They can just accept people that they're who they are. And that's what we want them to do.
I love that, taking stress off their plate. And it's funny because you think it's going to add stress by talking to them about this stuff, but actually it does the opposite.
No, it does.
Right.
When we tell our kids don't come in our room after 8, my wife has often told the kids when they were younger, she said, you can come in the bedroom in the morning, but if you get under the covers, we're going to be naked. She tells them all the time.
Stay on top of the covers, bring your own blanket.
It's one conversation, I never saw them get under the covers again. It was not weird for them. We didn't say naked was bad.
Right.
But we also know they don't want to see our naked.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
and we're quite comfortable.
They don't want to hear you.
No. They don't want to see our naked at all. So we're okay with that.
Go ahead.
So we were asked one time in an interview about the honesty part of it. And really, I truly believe that the honesty is so important. We want to teach our children to be honest, not to be deceitful.
Yes.
And one way to teach honesty is by showing honesty.
Yes.
Practicing what you preach, essentially. And so that's what we've done. We had our children ask similar questions, and we've been honest about it and told them what's going on. And then it's up to them whether they want to accept it or not.
Yeah. A funny story is our son came home a few months ago, and he said, one of my friends found you guys on YouTube, on Instagram. He said he found Sex Because, their 17-year-old son. And I said, what'd you say? He goes, I asked him what he had to be looking up to find you guys, and he should be ashamed of himself. And I was sitting back going, that is the best answer ever. He gave me a high five. He's like, hey, It's my
Not that
parents.
he has to be ashamed of it, but it was
No,
it was like he was trying to shame our son
Right.
Yeah.
for what we do.
He's like, no, you're not going to do that. And they know all about sex because, and people's like, are they on your Instagram? Well, our younger kids try to get on there. Our older kids don't want to have anything to do with it.
No.
And but the thing is, we're exactly who we are, and that's one thing that Arienne showed me. She's the one person I've met that is exactly who she says she is, and we try to be that at our home too. So we can't teach something that we don't practice because I don't have that kind of memory. I have to teach things from my soul. And as therapists, that's what you have to do. Either you can identify with the information and teach it well, or you're lying. And we definitely don't want to do that when it comes to our children.
So in talking about honesty, initially, was it easy to be honest? Or were there times that there was like, did you have trust issues as far as can I be honest about
with each
things
other?
that I'm feeling
yeah.
with each other? I mean, was that process like? I mean, I know with me, there was, because it was like, especially being introduced to the open, more of an open lifestyle.
Yeah.
When John was saying, it's fine for you to do this, I was like,
What the hell?
And also to
Sure.
share some of the things in her past, and to be able to share them with someone that she could trust was going to
With that
embrace her
information.
no matter
Yeah.
what, and,
Right.
and also trust with the information in itself. So
Yes.
That's not the norm for someone that you haven't and I think when we started, we discovered that about each other. I gave you my password. 7 days in, I gave her we were texting furiously. And every day we went from touching hands at work one day after we got over a 2-month funk of avoiding each other. And I gave her, we texted for 7 days, all day, all afternoon. And I gave her my password finally. I said, I want you to check out this site. And it's a lifestyle site. I'm a single guy on this site. I want you to check it out. She said, what?
really?
And I said, here's my password. Here's my screen name. Before we go further with this, I need you to see all of this.
What did you think?
I logged on. I had no idea this world existed.
Right?
None.
I was like, oh my God.
We haven't even kissed yet.
We didn't kiss yet. We just
And
been
now-
texting a lot.
I am seeing pictures of him naked with other women. I was like, what is this? And I go through all of his emails, all of his messages,
She went through all of them.
every single one.
2 hours I didn't hear from her. She spent 2 hours.
Were you
going through
sweating?
the last? Oh my Lord, I was sweating. I was sweating. I was like, oh my God, this is over. Well, at least it got over early. At least I didn't waste my time.
at least it wasn't super on the madly in love, and she does
Exactly.
But what were you thinking, seeing him with those other women or the conversations? What was going through your head? Was it kind of...
So first, like seeing him naked, I was extremely turned on. So I was like, okay, I've got to have that, firstly. And then, secondly, I thought, I don't know how I feel about seeing him with other women. So that was a little different for me. But I also knew that the way I did as far as like masturbating every day, and the type of pornography that I enjoyed, I knew that I wasn't mainstream as well.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so let's talk about this.
Really?
Yeah.
How old were you?
I was,
29.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 29. She don't know her ages for nothing. So you ask her how old she is today, she won't. Okay. But that was yeah. She took 2 hours to look through everything, and she called me and she said, "Is this all about you wanting to hook up with other girls?" I was like, no.
That was my thought.
Okay.
She goes, I just was in a relationship where it just seemed like you was just all about hooking up with other girls. I said, I appreciate your candor and worry, but that's not what this is about. And she said, well, I want to talk about it. I want to see what this is all about, and let's discuss. And I think like a week later, we were saying, I love you. We hadn't even slept together yet. And it just, that's the same thing.
Just
We're
like
like, oh,
ours.
this is so weird.
Said, I love you quick. And next thing you know, we ended up here. I mean, we had some struggles the first year. I even said, if we do anything crazy, it's going to be male only. And she's like, hey, this has got to be the way it is. And because I've been hurt before in this way. And then afterwards, we did try some things with a girl, and that didn't go so well. And we had our ups and downs the first year trying to discover what we enjoyed and what we didn't, only to watch it change a year later. and then change again in a year.
Yes.
Proof that it's a process
It is a process.
process.
It's a big process.
and a fluid.
It is.
Yeah.
And so tell us, how do people find you online? What's your web address? And
Pretty easy. Sexbecause.com. It's our Instagram. Sex Because 2.
Sex
Yep.
Because.
Instagram is Sex Because 2, and also on Facebook it's Sex. Oh, see, Sex Because.
Everything's sex.
There it's set up. You let me set it up. It'd be like Charlie and Arienne here, and Sex Because here, and the let out here. I don't know. But she set up everything. She's very much like that. So, but you can find it at Sex Because.
Okay.
And we're much like you guys. We do the coaching and the counseling, and it's nice that we have a network of people that are really good at what they do to help everyone. So we tell people often, choose any of us. There's a lot to offer.
it has been so great and fantastic learning about you guys, more about you guys today, and I'm sure our audience really appreciate it as well.
Thank you.
And be sure and sign up for our email list at openlove101.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And be sure and let us know how you
Instagram,
enjoy
whatever.
this. Yes,
Please do.
yeah. Ours isn't that easy, so really appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you guys for having us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Man, Jackie, that was a great video. And if you guys liked it, subscribe below and you'll get plenty more where that came from. That's for sure.